Hey there, CGDivers community. Today's video is going to be a bit different. With the rise of AI technology, our game development landscape is constantly evolving. That's why I'm thrilled to introduce you to my friends over at Polygonflow and their groundbreaking plugin called Dash. What grabbed my attention about Dash is its extensive array of features. This plugin is jam-packed with tools that have completely transformed my environment design workflow. The speed and capabilities it offers are simply mind-blowing. In this video, I'll review some of the most useful features of Dash and exploring how AI is reshaping the way we approach game design. Can AI truly enhance our creativity without overshadowing it? Let's discover this answer together in this video. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Okay guys, so after you installing Dash, you're gonna see here a button which says Create Worlds with Dash. Just click on it and you will have this pop-up. So here you have AI tagging, you have a search panel where you can search for different functions of Dash. For example, scatter. You can scatter surface, which we're gonna cover a little bit later. And here you have two buttons, browse all your content and double click to view all the tools from Dash. So if I double click, you can see all the tools from Dash. You can review them, you can read their description, etc. If I double click on browse my assets, this is the AI tagging panel. So it's the same as clicking the AI tagging. And let me explain how this works. Right now I have in my project R2D2 and I just imported this into Dash AI tagging. And this is for my current project. For example, if I include this folder, right click include, I can add 8 more assets. You just need to click on compute 8 assets. You're gonna have to wait a little bit time and it will import those assets into the Dash content browser under the current project. So everything that you created from Blender, Maya or Max, you can import it into the content browser for usage, and I'm going to show you how important this is. So after you import it, you're going to see your objects, materials, everything here. If I right click on my object, you're going to have this drop down menu which says asset details, find similar, add to favorites, remove from favorites, finding folders, finding content browser. You can recompute it and delete the cache. The most important thing is the asset details. If I click here, you can see here a tag panel. Right now, I don't have tags for my R2D2, I just removed them. But if I go to cave and I open this is a placeholder for my cave. I right click, I go to the asset details. The Dash AI already added few tags to my mesh. So we have under drawer, cigarette case, drawer, cigarette box, coffee table. And this is because this looks like that. And it added automatically tags over here. And what we can do is we can add additional tags. So let's say this is a cave. I'm gonna add cave, I'm gonna hit enter, I'm gonna hit save, I'm gonna close, and right now I can go to my search, type cave, and I can find this specific item. So this is how you can organize your assets in your project and access them pretty easily. All right. You can add as many tags as you want to your mesh in order for you to find it and to describe it a little bit more. And you can use this for easy access as an easy finding, not going through all those folders trying to find your object, the object that you want. You just go here, type in the search, and you will find your object. This is for the current project. And if you go onto the drop down, if you don't have the drop down, you're gonna have here buttons. And if I go to the drop down, you can see that you have access to Polyheaven. This entire library comes with Dash. Everything over here, from materials, from HDRs, from models, everything is free for the users of Dash, and it is accessible from the content browser. Here you can see an icon to download. And if I right click, go to the asset details, we already have tags for this object. So if I start searching here for vintage, I can see everything that is vintage over here, and I can use it in order for me to create that vintage scene that I want. All right, so right now I did download this camera and this barrel, and they don't have this download icon. And how I can add them into my scene? It is pretty straightforward. Just drag and drop them into your scene. Let me just move this around. And if I go and click the quick help, you can see here you have the hotkeys, how you can manipulate this. Right now we are in Dash mode, which is placing the asset on the scene, and the asset is snapping to the geometry of every object. You can place it on the wall, you can place it on the ground. So let's say we're going to put it over here, and I'm holding shift a little bit to rotate it. I'm holding control and left mouse button just to scale it. Let me move it a little bit like that. And when you're satisfied with the placement, hit enter. That's it. Pretty easy. And this is how you can, drag and drop different assets. Let's drag and drop this barrel over here. It will start importing the barrel into my library of this project. And the barrel is pretty big, so I'm going to hold control. Just size it like that. Put my barrel over here. Maybe rotate it a little bit with shift. Hit enter. We're done. All right. This is pretty good. So all the Polyheaven library is accessible to Dash users. The next is your Megascans library. So when you go to the Megascans library, you can see all the assets that you've downloaded onto your machine. Everything here is also accessible. If I go to this cactus, right click, you can see the tags that are from Quixel. So you can add your custom tag. Let's say because I'm Bulgarian and I speak in Cyrillic, I can add a custom tag in my language. So let's say some people in my team doesn't speak English, so I can add a word which means cactus. I can enter it, save it, close it, and here my team that doesn't speak English can search through my native language and find this object. So this is pretty useful if you have, let's say, teammates that doesn't speak that language, or you need that prop in French, let's say in German, etc. And also you can add to favorites. If you click on this star, it will be added to your favorites. And if I go over here on the top and click the star, I can filter by my favorites assets. So those favorite assets should be the assets that you use the most in your levels. Let's say most of the people use rocks, let's say foliages, etc. You can access them pretty quickly from here. So this AI tagging will help you a lot with your project, will speed up a lot your development. And the other cool thing that I want to show you is you can find similar objects. So if I right click on those rocks and click find similar, it will give me objects that look like this one. And if I want to break up a little bit my environment, I can pick up different objects. Overall, this AI tagging is one of the most key features in Dash because it speeds up a lot of your workflow. Your assets can be ordered very good. So this is overall about AI tagging and how you can utilize this in your daily workflow. Let's move on with the next features. Alright guys, so let's proceed with the next feature, which is scattering. This is an advanced feature and I want to cover it more in depth so you can see how powerful Dash is. So in order for you to access the scatter tool, just double click here on the Dash icon. And the first one is surface scatter. Scatter vegetation, debris, garbage, and a lot of more things. When you click on it, you need to expand it because it has a lot of functions. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to select the surface on which you start scattering objects. So I'm gonna select my landscape over here in the outliner. I'm gonna hit plus over here. So this is the object that I want to scatter things on. So I'm just gonna add those grass pieces into my level over here. So they're all here. And then I'm gonna hit plus over here. And right now what we can see is that we start scattering grass across our surface. Let's start having some fun and playing with the settings. The first settings is density. It says how dense you want your objects to be scattered around. So let's put 0.8. Now our grass is more dense and more scattered around, but let's try with a little bit more, 0.85. And now it looks a little bit better. The next useful settings is minimum scale and maximum scale. I'm gonna put the maximum scale to 2. So my grass can be maximized at 0.2, and if I put the minimum scale of 0.02 and let's tweak this one to 1.4, you can see that we have a little variation over here in the scatter grass. But that's not all guys. From here, from the scale mode, you can choose different type of scaling modes. Right now I'm using the default, but you can use the average. It starts averaging between 0.2 and 1.4. You can choose the biggest, so we are aiming for the biggest one. We can use the smallest, or we can use the absolute. So just play around with those settings over here in the scale mode to try and find the one that you want. So the next thing is the noise scale, and this is adding extra variety onto your grass. So right now it is 0, which is saying it is not working. Let's try with 1. You can see how we are creating different patterns of this grass. Here, a little less grass. Here we have a little more grass. Let's try some different numbers. Let's try with 2. So here we have some patches of grass. Here we have some small grasses. In this area, we can observe that it is highly dense. And if you play around with it, you can pretty much break the repetitiveness in your grass over here. So noise is very good thing to use to break up this repetitiveness in your grass or foliages. The next settings is surface align. Right now, our metal structures that I've added here onto our landscape are aligned with the z-axis of the world. But if you want to start aligning your metal plates from the normals of the landscape, let's say we have here a quad from the landscape and the normal is sideways, it is going sideways, it is not going up. If you want to do that, you need to say the surface align, let's say 1, and those surfaces will align with the normals from your landscape or from the mesh that you're spawning and scattering some objects. If you start playing with it, you can of course add a different degree of it. That's too much. Let's say 2, let's say 3. You can see how beautiful shapes you can do, and you can create very interesting worlds with just using the surface align, like alien worlds, like robotic worlds, something like Horizon, and see how this looks pretty interesting and pretty good in no time, guys. So if you want to create some interesting shapes and if you want to align the objects to the surface normals, you just need to enable this. If you're using 0, it will be disabled and all the normals will be aligned with the world z-axis. But if you want to enable it, just put 1 and start playing with the numbers in order for you to create some interesting shapes. Moving to the next settings, it is sync, and this is pretty much pushing up and down the scattered objects from your landscape. So let's try to push them down 0.05, and if you want to push them down, the things that you scattered, you can see that they're now pushed down with 0.5 from their spawning points where the normal is. But if you want to push them up, minus 0.5, and you can push them up in the world. So if you need to adjust this after scattering around, and if you see the needs that you need to sync a little bit your objects, for example, when you scatter around on, let's say, a water surface and you need to push some things beneath the water, you can use this sync option to push objects beneath or above the surface that you're scattering things. And before going into depth with the masking and other stuff, the one thing that we didn't talk about is seed. You can start randomizing the scattering around the mesh and create some different scattering patterns until you're satisfied with your scattering. So after I demoed this one, I'm going to show you how you can remove those metal plates over here. So if you want to remove the metal constructions, you just need to go to those 3 dots over here, and you can see all the things that you're scattering onto this surface. And right now I want to get rid of those metal constructions. So I'm going to go here on the 3 dots and I'm going to just delete them. And everything here is back to normal. The next one is under featured masking, and it is called angle mask. And here you can start masking by calculating the angle and the slope power of the terrain. So let's say we have a mask of 10. Anything above this angle of 10 will not start scattering grass over here. As you can see here, we have grass all the way up here. And here we have another grass spawning because the angle is below 10. If we start tweaking up this, let's say 15, we start adding objects over here onto the angle, 20, 30, 40. So this is how you can scatter different objects based on an angle onto your terrain or onto your object, all right? So let's say we want to have 20, right? Anything that has angle above 20 will not spawn grass over here, right? And you can use invert over here if you want to invert it. I'm just gonna click, and everything that is above this angle will start spawning some grass. Okay, the next 2 settings for the masking is minimum height mask and maximum height mask. So let's say we want to scatter objects to a certain height. So right now it's 1, and let's say 2.5, and everything that is above 0.5 won't scatter. This is a little bit different than angle mask because we are just capping the scattering option to 0.5, and that is how it will work. So you can also work in combination with minimum height mask. So right now we're scattering some grass over here, but let's say we want to scatter from 0.2 to 0.5. If I put 0.2, 0.5, the grass over here will be eaten out and you're gonna no longer scatter meshes over here. But if you put 0, you can have your grass back over here. So just balancing those two, you can achieve different effects. Let's say we want the height mask to be 1, but we want the lower height mask to start from 0.3. So we can cut the grass over here, or let's say 0.2, and our grass can start scattering from here. If you go to the remove mask, it will randomly remove objects in ignoring the previous masking that we've done here. So if I put 0.5, we're gonna just remove some objects over here. Let me just turn it back. This can add extra variety to your terrain, extra randomization. So you can also use the remove mask so you can add a little bit more differences onto your terrain if you want to. And the final one is shrink mask. This will start shrinking the current mask points. So if I put 10, you can see that we start eating some of the edges. If I put 30, 40, we just start to shrinking up the mask. All right. So if you want to shrink it up, you can use the shrink mask option. And of course you can invert it. So if I invert it, I'm going to shrink from the outside to the inside. All right. The next option that I want to show you is how you can scatter some objects by raycasting from a mesh. This is pretty cool option and you can use it for scattering some stuff from different meshes. So let me just show you how it works. So we have this mining cart with some chopped trees. And what you can do over here, right now we are spawning this grass onto the landscape over here. And I want to spawn this grass onto the landscape in the area of this object. And I can do this by selecting this object, hit plus here under the raycast meshes. And what we are starting to see here is we are creating some grass over here just under this mesh. So we are raycasting from this mesh onto the landscape. And if I start moving, you can see that our grass is also moving. So this is very good for post-apocalyptic scenes or for some objects that you want to have some, let's say, dirt, some garbage beneath it. You can do that. And if you start rotating, of course, everything will work in real time and you can scatter your objects over here and you can place the things that you want beneath them. And of course, everything here is tweakable. The maximum scale is 0.5. Let's say the minimum scale is 0.3. And as you can see, everything looks pretty good and it works pretty good. So behind the hood, what it's doing, it's raycasting from this 3D mesh onto the landscape and spawning the objects that we predefined here in the scatter objects. And of course, here in the meshes, you can add a lot of different meshes. So let's say we have this barrel over here. So we scatter some grass from here. We want to scatter some grass under our barrel. So I'm going to hit plus. And as you can see, we start scattering some grass under our barrel over here. Let's try and do for the scale 0.1. And if I start intercepting with my landscape, I can see I have some grasses over here staring from my barrel. For example, if I do this, if I do it like that, and let's say this is going into the ground into some mud pit, you can see that how we can automatically scatter some grass around it and our prop is ready with some nice grass or garbage or whatever you added here in the scatter option. The next one is the rotation properties, and this is pretty much doing what it says. It starts rotating the objects by uniform angle. So you go to the X, Y, and Z and you start rotating, let's say 30. Let's say 10. We start rotating by 10. Let's say 10 here. Let's try with 2. And you can start randomly rotate your objects. So if you want to have different rotations over here, and everything is randomizing the angle. So you can randomize it over here. So for example, if those barrels were rocks, some small rocks, you can just start rotating them and at different angle to add a little bit of more differences in your terrain. The other option that is available for you is the scale properties, and here you can start adding different scale variations onto your landscape on top of those minimum and maximum scale. So what you can do is you can use custom scale And here from the custom scale, you can start scaling the X, Y, and Z minimum, and you can add X, Y, and Z maximum. So from here, you're just scaling on the 3 axes at the same time. But if you enable this, you can have control over the axis here. So let's try with 0.2, and let's try with 3. And we start creating some different shapes over here based onto the axis that we want. Let's say 0.2, and on the y-axis 0.1. So right now what we've created is a flat grass, and if you want to add flat grass to your terrain, you can do that by using those scaling options. So here, setting up the min and max scale per axis, and this is pretty useful for foliages, for plants, for grass, if you want to add different kind of effect into your terrain. If you want to scale sort, just disable this one, enable the scale sort, and start using the scale sort dither and the fall off sharpness. If you want, you can turn on the scale sort, and when you enable the scale sort, over here this option, the dither, is saying when using scale based object sorting, this dithers the different object passes, so giving us the more natural look. So let's start by putting 1, and it starts to create dither. Let's try with 2, let's try with 30. Let's try with -3. Let's try with 0. We are getting back to the original result. The next one is the noise mask, which is controlling how we can break up the noise scale over here. So let's try with 0.5, and you can see that we are starting to break up the noise over here. And if you use the breakup scale, we can control that. 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. We're getting randomization in the noise itself. If I put 0, we are going back to original noise. And here you have another option. You can wrap the noise, you can use the noise scale multiplier, you can use also scaling from the noise on X, Y, and Z. So if you want to break up the noise mask over here, there is a panel for it. The next very useful tool is proximity mask. So we have 3 proximity masks, and they work all the same, and you can apply different kind of objects patterns. So let's go with the first one. What this does is you need to select an object. So I'm adding this object, and we set up the distance from where we want this object not to have grass over here, right? So if I start moving it to my right, you can see how the grass is disabling itself. And if I start using the distance, this is saying how far I want from this object the grass not to spawn. But let's turn on the distance to 0.5 so we can have better look. And you can see how we are just spawning here a little bit foliage. So this is preventing foliages to intercept with this object if we want to. And of course you can invert it. So if I hit invert, it will start spawning grass in the opposite direction. So if we want to have grass all the way like that around our objects, it will spawn the grass around our objects, just like the raycast meshes, but this is based on distance, and you can tweak up the distance from here, right? And of course you can tweak up more sampling. We'll add extra detail and we'll add extra samples so you can have a better result if you need it to. Okay, the next one is object masking, which is pretty much like the proximity masking, and keep in mind that this is working on with ray tracing, and it's a lot more costly, but it's more accurate, and it only works with meshes. And again, it works like the proximity mask, but it's more heavy and it's more accurate over here. And you need to have connection between your mesh and your landscape in order for it to work. So if it's above, you need to use the one mask that I show you, the raycast mask. And if you want to intercept and have this complete control over how it works, and if you hover on it, you can see the description: simple object near the meshes. Unlike proximity mask, this one uses ray tracing to proper mesh proximity masking, and it is more costly and only works with meshes. So keep this in mind. And of course you can hit invert to invert it, but it is very costly on my machine too. Another great thing that I want to show you is how you can make path trails inside this landscape, and it is pretty easy. So what you can do is use another function for dash, which is called draw curve. So I'm gonna search for draw, and I'm gonna click over here, and I'm gonna start drawing a curve. So I'm gonna draw a curve over here all the way up to here. Then I'm gonna hit enter, and I'm gonna put the visibility on onto my items here. And I have drawn one curve over here, so we have this dash curve, and I want to draw one more, so I'm gonna search for draw curve, and I'm gonna draw another curve because I'm making like a path. Okay, and right now I'm gonna hit enter. What we can do is we can mask this and create the path. So I'm gonna select those two curves, I'm gonna add to the object, and here I'm gonna hit G, and here you can see how we are making a path trails. And I want to make a bigger distance, so 0.3. Let's try with 0.5, and we are making those path trails, as you can see over here. Pretty easy, straightforward. You can just draw the curve and just add them to the proximity masking and create the path trails onto your terrain. Pretty easy, without any drawing over here. I'm just drawing a curve and everything is working. And of course you can invert it, and you can just create patches of grass alongside your landscape. The next feature is vertex color masking, and here you can start color masking if you have a shader which is supporting vertex painting. You can have the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel working, and you can start masking some grass based on the vertex painting. If you want to know more about this, go to the Dash website to learn more about how the vertex color masking is working, because you need to have a custom shader. And if you want to know how you can create this vertex painting, check out my other videos on YouTube. So this is pretty much how scattering works and how powerful Dash is with just this function, and we have a lot more functions available in Dash. And finally, you have a texture mask. Here you can plug in a texture and mask the terrain based on the texture. You can control the color, threshold, the texture tile. We also have an edge breakup, where you can break up the distance around the edges. And here in the mask, here you can set up a limit for your max count of scattered objects. Let's review the next functions. The next wonderful feature that I want to show you is how you can physically spawn objects inside your scene. So right now I have my dash over here, and here in the search bar you can also search for everything that you want. For example, if we want to add something about character, so I can just search for character, and what we have here is we can spawn character, we can create camera, etc. So here is a search bar of all the functions that Dash includes. Right now I want to use the physics, so I'm going to search for physics, and I'm going to use this physical tool. I'm going to click on it, and right here I will have a menu. Right now I want to show you how you can paint, and this is pretty cool feature. So let's say I want to paint those books, and I go here in the paint mode, I click, and let me open the quick help. When you open the quick help, you're going to see all the hotkeys that you can use while you paint. So in order to paint, you can use the left mouse button plus drag. But first I want to increase or decrease the radius. And how I can do that is by using shift plus middle mouse button, and you're going to drag horizontally. So let's do that. This is the size that I want to paint over here. And if I go with my left mouse button, I can start paint some books. And all those books are physically simulated, and this is happening in just a few seconds. So if you want to place some derbies, if you want to place some trash, if you want to place some pebbles, etc., you can use the physical tool in order to do that. And you can use Control and left mouse button to remove objects that you don't want. So let's shrink up the size, and let's hold Control and start removing some of the books. Okay, and by removing them, the cool thing that you can notice is the physics is working. So by removing some of the books below the others, I'm still simulating the physics over here. The other cool thing that you can use is, let me scale up the size a little bit. I can use the middle mouse button, and I can, like a magnet, attach all the objects over here and move them across the scene. And this is pretty good if you want to place them across your scene. So let's say I'm gonna shrink up my size a little bit, and I want those two books, and I want to play around with the physics a little bit. You can see how powerful this is, how playful this is, and I can put the size like that, and I can just stack them up and place all the books, let's say, next to the bookshelf. Okay, and I have this book pile in just few clicks. So physical tool, one of the most powerful feature here in Dash. It will save you a lot of time, this physical tool, if you have a big scene, especially if you're working on a post-apocalyptic game environment. The next great feature that I want to show you is how you can scatter objects through a curved path and how easy and how fast it is. I know that you can do that in Unreal Engine, but with Dash you have so much more options and it is just 2 clicks away. So let's create a curve. I'm gonna draw a curve, so I'm searching for a curve and I'm gonna draw here a curve like that. Okay, so I have this curve. I'm gonna hit enter. The next thing that I'm going to search for is path. And this path scatter is scattering objects alongside a curve or spline. So I'm gonna enable it. What we need to select is, first we need to select the curve, which is the object that we want to scatter objects around. I'm gonna hit plus on the curve. Then you need to select which kind of objects you want to spawn alongside the curve. And let me spawn this object. I'm gonna hit plus. And right now I have all those objects spawned over here. And why I'm saying that Dash is very powerful, because you have all this arsenal of tools over here. I can say the maximum scale could be this one and the minimum could be this one. And as you can see here, they're randomized. You can also put a little jitter in the scale. You can twist them if you want that. And the very cool thing about this tool is if I select any point of the curve and start moving, you can see how all the objects over here are moving with the curve. You can move them around in real time. You can rotate them if you're moving them on the Z-axis. And this tool is super powerful if you want to place a lot of objects alongside a curve. Maybe you create a road and you want to place some objects. So this is one very powerful tool if you want to spawn an object across a path or spline and you have all this arsenal of tools in your help. Alright, so the next is very cool feature that I can show you. If you search for fog, we have create fog volumetric or create fog plane. Let's go first with the plane. I create a little plane over here and there is nothing that you can see. And in order for you to use plane cards, I already have a tutorial of it. It is quite difficult. You need to create the material, you need to create itself the card. But here in Dash, what you can do, you can go to the procedural material component of this card, then find the material itself, and they already have a material set up for you. So let me just rotate it a little bit like that. Let me just scale the fog card. And right now, what we can see over here is a little bit of fog, but you have complete control over it. So if I tune up the opacity, you can see the fog card. Let me put 1. And what I can do is I can move it a little bit down. And here you can control the brightness. You can control the fog distance. You can control also the rotation of this fog card. You can control the fall off, how it should blend with the rest of the meshes, with your landscape. Right now we have hard edge, and if we do a little bit fall off, we have pretty soft edge over here onto this fog. And when you are moving it, it is randomizing the fog card, so you can have different kind of fog cards, not repetitive ones. Also, you can tweak up the scale. You can play with the scale from here if you want. You can play with the tint. Maybe you have some greenish environment that you want to have. So here is a little bit of green, a little bit of pink. This is the first one that I want to show you. The next one is, if I go to fog, I can just create volumetric fog. And here you can see the result right now. It's pretty cool. And you also have the arsenal to tweak the density, to tweak the distance, to tweak the height. You can control the God rays from here. Let's say 1. Here you can see the God rays, how silly it is. Let's try with 0.2. You have nice God rays over here. And this is pretty handy because you don't need to touch any sophisticated or complicated settings into Unreal. Everything here is through the Dash dashboard, and you can tweak the saturation, you can tweak the brightness, and you can get all these fog results in just a few seconds. And the next thing that I really like is you can add a dust into your scene. So I'm gonna search for dust, and you can create dust particles. And right now I created dust particles in my scene, but they're not so visible. Let me show you. Here we have the dash dust particles, and they're a little bit. And from the settings over here, what we can do is we can do the density. We can make them more dense. We can tweak up the scale. Let's try with 0.5. And if I go through my scene, you can see some of the particles over here when I'm moving. And let me just put the brightness and the opacity. I'm going to do opacity 1. I'm going to do brightness 2. And I'm going to do saturation of 1. Let's tweak the hue. And right now, if I'm moving through my scene, you can notice some particles over here into my scene. Right? See how we have some little particles while we are moving. And what you can do also, you can scale them up. Let's say I'm going to scale them up all the way to 3. And here we have those particles. All right, pretty big. And we have this like virus in our air. All right. And what we can do, we can apply gravity to it. So if I put -1 gravity, you can make these particles go down. It is like a little shower. Of course, you can change the texture of the particle, you can change the material, but I'm just showing you the functionality, how you can work with them. You can stretch them. So if I stretch them 10 on Y, you can create this kind of heavy rain effect. All right. We can stretch them on X. Let's put 0.5. And you can have this kind of nice rain effect. Let me put the density to 0.4. Yeah, pretty good. So you can create different kind of effects with just, again, one single click through the Dash plugin. The next feature is Grid Scatter, and as you can see here from the creators of Dash, they set up this Walking Dead inspired scene. And over here, when you use the Grid Scatter, you can scatter different panels into a grid. By tweaking all the parameters like width, depth, height, scale factor, etc., you can create the grid that you need. And as you know, the ceiling over there is just created by pattern. Then you can break up the pattern by randomizing using the seed, or random remove some panels in order for you to get this post-apocalyptic scene. Over here, we are rotating the panels to give it this damaged idea that we have. Everything here in the hospital is damaged, so we are just rotating them to get this nice effect. And by using all the tweakable settings, this is the final result that you can get. After that, you need to bake the instance, and you can manually override the position and the rotation of each of the panels so you can get that final look. And this is the final look of the scene. See how the panels blends with the scene. The next great feature that I want to show you is how you can place decals using Dash. So just create a plane, then scale it up across your scene where you want the decals to be, just like that. Let me move it a little bit to the right. Alright, then go and search for the Decal Scatter tool. Open it, and the first thing is you need to select the surface that you want the decals to be placed. Next, you need to place few decals inside your scene so you can load it up under the decals section. So let's place few decals inside our scene. Add them to the decals and then hide the surface. From here, you can just play out with the settings. You can play with the density. As you can see here, we are just figuring out how dense we want. Then you can play with min and max scale, just like all the tools that comes with Dash. So something like this, you can rotate them. Let's try with 0.5, and you can play with the seed. And this is how easily you can populate decals inside your scene. And we come to the end of this video, and here I'm going to show you how you can activate Dash, and you can test it out and validate if this plugin is something that you want and need inside your Unreal Engine workflow. So you can find the link in the description of this video, click on it, and it will open you the Polygonflow website. So here in the Polygonflow website, when you scroll on the main page, you can see different tutorials. Over here, you have many in-depth tutorials that will cover all the features of Dash. All right, so check them out. The next thing is go to pricing. And over here in the pricing, you have a button which says download free trial. This is the thing that you want. You can download Dash, you can activate it in Unreal Engine 5, you can test it out, all the features will be available to you. I have a discount code which will give you 30% discount of buying Dash annually. So what you need to do is you need to select the annual plan, and my discount code CGDealer/Dash will work only on the annual freelance plan. So keep that in mind, 30% only on the annual freelance plan. So how to get it? Select the plan freelance, then add your email. After you add your email, here there is a field which says enter promo code. Click on it, and here you can apply the code cgviewers/dash. Click apply, and you're gonna have 30% off from the total amount of yearly subscription to Dash. This is how you can get 30% off after your trial period. Thank you guys for watching this video. See ya in the next one. And before I end up this video, I want to let you know that I've created a Blueprints Masterclass for Unreal Engine 5. It is available right now on Udemy. So if you want to expand your knowledge and not just only create art pieces in Unreal Engine 5, but create some characters, create some game logic, my course is the perfect solution from beginners to intermediate Unreal Engine 5 users. The course itself is 15 hours long, and it has all the foundation that you need to kickstart your blueprint knowledge in Unreal Engine 5. So if you want to keep evolving yourself beyond just creating art in Unreal Engine 5, enroll now. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to support me and get access to all my files, also to the auto material that I've created previously, join my Patreon page for $4.99, and with your pledge you're supporting me to keep creating amazing videos like this. Each one of you can make a big difference by supporting my channel so I can keep making those videos. Thank you guys for watching this video. Happy game development. I'm out.